Welcome to another round of Honest Shots. My name is Envision and I'm here to speak my mind. Before Netflix's One Piece defied everybody's expectations, live-action anime adaptations have had a very frustratingly bad record over the years quality-wise. For God knows how long, most live-action movies and shows have been panned by critics and fans of the original sources one after another. Some have said films being regarded as some of the worst of all time. Not to say every adaptation was that way. There was Speed Racer, Alita Battle Angel, and I heard that Riki-Oh, the story of Ricky, got amazing reviews. I'll have to check that out sometime for a future episode. And of course, there was the live-action One Piece series that I mentioned earlier. One Piece. But what about the majority of animes that never got that level of care? What about the Dragon Balls, the Cowboy Bebops, the Death Notes, and the Last Airbender if you're desperate? What are they doing wrong? Are they too faithful or not faithful enough? Do they just suffer the same problems any other films could face too often, such as terrible performances, wimpy action scenes, and embarrassingly written dialogue?
Sounds to me like blackmail.
You're damn right it is, because, Jet, you are black and you are male.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Or is it a case of disconnect? I have my own theory about the disconnect section, but that'll be a story for another day. Plus, I haven't actually watched any of them, so I could be wrong for all I know. But the point is, any attempt to bring anime into live action was, and still just might be, a death sentence. And it looks like that 1995's Fist of the North Star is no exception. Or is it? Truth be told, I haven't watched the original animated versions yet, so I'm looking at Tony Randall's adaptation as its own entity. I did the same thing with One Piece and it became one of my new favorite shows, so I thought the same thing could happen again here. The best way I can summarize this film would be a Bob Geldof lookalike and a Mel Gibson lookalike try to dominate one another, and condoms are involved. Oh, and it takes place during World War III or the apocalypse, whatever comes first. So as live action anime goes, is it any good or is it any bad? There's only one way I can find out. Let's see how far As Its Own Thing can get me. This is Fist of the North Star.
Slitting your wrist will be quicker. Is that a fact?
The movie starts off with a monologue by the deceased master of the martial arts school, North Star, Ryuken, played by Malcolm McDowell, who explains everything we need to know before he gets assassinated by Shin from the opposing school, Sovereign Cross, played by Costas Mandalore, who went against his teachings to create a totalitarian landscape with the remains of the world, with his own militia who terrorized the survivors by driving what I can only describe as rusty, worn-down versions of those circular bikes from Totally Spies.
High in his throne, Lord Shin gazes past the city to his dreams of empire.
It looks more like he's judging whoever's watching this film. I stand by my One Piece strategy, Shin. This is why I still have Netflix. We also get introduced to our main hero, Kenshiro, played by Gary Daniels. He is the son of Ryuken and the heir to North Star. He's meant to take down Shin to restore order, but he's reluctant because he'd rather wander the desert alone because somebody glued a bunch of condoms onto his body as a prank. I'm serious, that's how those wounds were created, and apparently he was nicknamed Condom Man on set because of that. But that didn't seem to affect him too negatively, considering he named one of his kids Kenshiro. Oh, and there's something about a tragic past in there as well, but we'll focus on that later. Okay, back to the story. The village we focus on is called Paradise Valley, where food and water is limited, there's acid rain, and everyone's in constant fear of the Crossmen. All except for one fearlessly overconfident boy in particular, Dante Basco, played by Dante Basco, or as the movie pronounces it, Bat.
Okay, check this out. Whoa! Hey, no help? Seriously, you guys have got to be on guard at all times.
I hope you like the sound of his voice as much as I do, because that's pretty much what he's going to sound like well into his late 70s.
This is not the quickest route to Paradise Valley, but we can work on it.
Finding a lot of pride in Jake Long these days, which is really great, and various other things, you know. I had that one of those careers where I can pop up anywhere.
He meets up with his younger blind sister Lynn, played by Nalona Heron, but trouble arises.
Is it peaches?
They do their damage, and Bat and Lynn get confronted by my most hated character in the whole film, Jackal, played by Chris Penn. He doesn't do too much to start, but just you wait. He's gonna get a lot worse. Out in the desert, Kenshiro finds a house and convinces the owners to let him stay for the night.
I need shelter.
Hey, weren't you that Bob guy from the Batman film a while ago? A long while? After suffering through a nightmare, he wakes up to hear some thugs antagonizing the owners and decides to repay his debt. He's so powerful, he breaks jaws and causes people to explode by punching them a lot.
Don't turn your back on me!
You're already dead.
Wait, I remember this.
貴様の拳などかほどにも効かんわい。お前はもう死んでいる。何?
So that's where that joke came from. This whole time and I never knew. What the hell, movie? That guy's head is about to explode and we don't even get to see it? If David Cronenberg was in charge, we definitely would have gotten our money's worth. Meanwhile, Shin spars with Hulk Hogan's body double and kills him with his fiery fist of unconvincing effects. We then meet Julia, played by Isako Ashio, who looks surprisingly similar to the woman from Ken's Nightmare, and is currently at Shin's tower but doesn't look that happy to be there, with nothing more than a bag of seeds for company, and later the plot. Kenshiro finds another shelter owned by Bat and Lynn. Despite Bat trying to force him out, he notices Lynn's blindness, and after hearing that their parents were killed by Crossmen and left them as orphans, he decides to help out.
What are you doing?
I'm going to precede Mr. Beast by 28 years. Isn't this after the Third World War? I don't give a shit. He brings her sight back with a pressure point and goes off to find the plot. Shin instructs Jackal to lead another attack on Paradise Valley and shares his visions for the new era to an unconvinced Julia. Back at the valley, everyone starts preparing for whatever comes next. Since I didn't bring these two up earlier, Charlotte is played by Downtown Julie Brown, and Asher is played by Melvin Van Peebles, who was also a director and once made a film about a racist salesman who turns into a black person. You bet your bottom piercings I'm reviewing that someday. Lynn gets a premonition about convincing Ken to help save Paradise Valley, and we cut back to him where he sees Ryuken, urging him to follow his destiny to thwart Shin despite his refusal in the creepiest way possible.
You are in default of your destiny.
No, Father. My destiny is hate and revenge.
The choice is not yours to make.
He later finds and rescues Bat from more goons, who tries to convince him to save Paradise Valley, but it might be too late as the Crossmen initiate another attack.
It ain't easy being sleazy.
Oh no, Lynn is screaming for help! Or maybe that's her dub actress, and Kenshiro can hear her from miles away because he's psychic, I guess. But that doesn't matter, for he's finally going to kick some Crossmen ass.
Whatever you say.
Just in time as well, they're getting more hateable by the minute, and even this guy's attempts to make peace aren't working.
I accept reality. We can work together to assure a brighter future for both peoples.
Him?
Yeah.
Kill that brown nose in your sack of shit before I puke all over myself.
Gotcha.
Please! I don't want to die! There'll be no trees! Once we clean up the place, we can clean up.
Lynn stands up against the Crossmen and almost gets decapitated before Jackal decides to keep her alive for questioning when she says,
Kisha will make you pay.
You have something to tell me, little one? Take her!
Ken and Bat finally arrive and try to make their way underground to find Lynn. Meanwhile, Shin continues to gaslight Julia into believing that his actions and all the chaos are for the good of the future. This is where we finally see that tragic past I mentioned earlier. According to the flashback, Julia was engaged with Kenshiro, but when Shin went rogue for some reason and killed Ryuken, he tracked down Kenshiro to kill him as well. He fought off Jackal to the point of his head almost exploding, which explains why he's wearing that leather gear around it, but he was unable to take down Shin, who inflicted those condom markings on him and left him for dead before kidnapping Julia right before his eyes. Unable to come to grips with his past, Kenshiro became a broken man with no purpose until this point. Julia stands up to Shin after he knocks her seeds to the floor, one of which hides in a tiny crack. I guess we'll see where this goes. Lin refuses to cooperate with the Crossmen, so one of them literally tries to shake her down for answers. Continuing their search, Kenshiro and Bat find a survivor who points out where Lin is, and Kenshiro frees her and challenges the interrogator. Lin gets caught by Jackal, but Bat steps into her defense, but gets stabbed in the process.
Look out, he's got a knife!
Kenshiro defeats the towering foe and all the other Crossmen, one of which makes it easy for him. Before Jackal shoots him down, Bat makes a last-ditch effort to screw up his shot.
I almost won. You did win back. Paradise Valley is free again, thanks to you.
Did you hear him? I'm a hero.
You are a hero.
Rest in peace, Bat. Aside from Lin, you left a much bigger impact in this film than the rest of the good guys. Kill him. Kill that Mick Foley imposter motherfucker. I'm sick of his bullshit. I guess I will have to wait, because the spirit of Ryuken comes back to encourage Kenshiro to restore balance, so he heads to Shin's outpost to take him down for good. Shin gets word about it and sends Jackal to keep Julia in the basement so he can finish off Kenshiro properly this time. But Julia manages to outsmart her captor, and a game of industrial cat and mouse ensues.
You've made this big battle very happy.
Kenshiro enters the tower, and after fighting off some minions, challenges Shin to a duel to end all duels. Their fight is evenly matched at first, but Shin decides to play dirty by tricking Kenshiro into believing that Julia died, giving him the edge. But unbeknownst to Kenshiro, she defeats Jackal by using the basement gears to rip off his leather net. My most hated character is finally dead, at long last, and we actually get to see his head explode. I mean, it's not Scanner's quality, but it's better than nothing. Before Shin can finish him off, Kenshiro sees a tiny plant from one of Julia's seeds, giving him a big enough boost to overpower and kill Shin. But was it all for naught? Is Julia really dead? Just bring her out. The two reunite, and the liberated Crossmen bow down to them. The end.
Tell Shin the flag of the North Star flies over Paradise Valley.
Let's talk about performances and characters. Oddly enough for me, the best ones did not come from the main cast, but rather the supporting cast. Gary and Malcolm are okay, but Dante, Chris, Isako, and Alona and their characters are where it's at. Lin is an adorable character with a sad backstory and a good amount of endurance against the Crossmen. She even slaps Jackal.
Trouble, kitty?
Don't touch me!
What's not to like? And Alona is surprisingly good for a child performer. Plus, any moment a kid stands up to trouble and uses profanity is a good moment in my book. Next is Isako as Julia. When I hear her scream out for Kenshiro when he's getting beaten, I feel it, as if she's actually watching someone in front of her die. I also like the moment when she stands up against Shin, knowing that despite all that happened, whether she believes Kenshiro really is dead or alive, there's nothing that Shin can do to make her see things his way, not even attacking her.
Hit me, Shin. Kill me. I'm already dead.
Bastard can't even do it.
It takes a lot of willpower to stand up to an oppressor when you think your life is either over or not going to get better. And by far my favorite moment from her is going up against and later killing Jackal while Kenshiro and Shin fight. Not only is the death satisfying, but it's nice seeing a spin on what could have been a typical damsel in distress situation. On to what I assume is a lot of people's favorite actor in the movie, Dante Batisco. Probably my favorite character here. Bat is a noble, yet an in-over-his-head fighter with a lot of ambition, and never becomes too irritating. And Dante brings this kid to life with his energy and that iconic youthful voice that he's seemingly been cursed with through the years.
I want you to kick twice as high. Stop! It's good. No more kicks. Punch!
He kind of reminds me of Sokka from the Avatar show, which is pretty ironic considering what he would get up to in the next decade. Also, Bat's death scene was the most emotional part of the film, with Julia's flashback at second place. And finally, there's Chris Penn as Jackal. Talk about love to hate. This guy is maniacal, remorseless, and extremely over the top. Every second he's on screen, I'm anxiously waiting for him to face his eventual satisfying demise, and marveling at his serial killer presence whilst doing so.
And as for you, you little bitch, the only singing I want to hear from you is the whereabouts of your friend Kenshiro.
It says quite a bit when I think the sub-villain is more engaging to watch than the actual villain, but that'll come later. Also, is it me, or does he sound an awful lot like Joe Pesci?
No, I'm in charge of watching you. How do you like them apples? Sometimes the fox gets a break.
Gotta remember, a younger customer always turns into a loyal customer. Remember that. Remember that.
As for the action, my personal highlight is whenever the Crossmen attack Paradise Valley. I'll get to the less serious action later, but this is where it's at its most brutal. People get shot and ransacked. This guy even gets lit on fire. Look at him. They even strip and prepare to rape one of them. It's horrifying. This justifies the film's R rating, even if the rest doesn't as much. I also like the scene where Ryuken contacts Kenshiro from the grave in the form of a mummy. I wasn't expecting that at all. I think that's about everything that I enjoyed from this film. So now let's move on to everybody's favorite part of live-action anime adaptations, the disappointment.
You are in default of your destiny.
Remember when I said the rest of the action did not justify the R rating this film got? Well, I think that's where the weakest component comes into play. This film is not violent enough. Compared to the Valley attack scenes, the rest of the action looks so inauthentic, it can make you question if this film's actually rated R or PG-13, and it really screws up the tone. Gary Daniels is not only an actor, he's also a martial artist. But the film makes it look like he was the only actor with any fighting experience, and he goes up against a guy who's played by an actual wrestler. The film doesn't give his skills any justice because of the editing and how held back the violence feels. During the fight with Shin, you can see Costas take a hit before Kenshiro kicks him. Kenshiro's fighting isn't even consistent. Why doesn't he do that technique to make people explode more often, such as with Goliath or even Shin? Was the budget so low that they can only have one person blow up and it went to the character that deserved it the most? As for the editing, there's too many quick cuts and close-ups that make the fighting look fake. And also some cutting frame moments that sometimes look effective, but other times look haphazardly placed in. The effects are also hit or miss. There's some pretty cool body prosthetics, but Kenshiro's wounds and some of the blood effects leave a lot to be desired. As I said before, the wounds were made up by condoms, and it clearly shows. And the blood shooting out of people's arms look more like near empty bottles of red spray paint. It's pretty much 30% blood and 70% air.
This is even worse than bags of chips with all the air in them.
I heard from other reviews that Shin was the best character in the film for them, but I can't say I agree. I thought he was pretty dull and boring. Other than 3 fights, he doesn't do much except stand around the tower looking stony-faced. And other than being manipulative, he doesn't seem to have that much of a character, and there's no explanation on why he turned against his masters to become a dictator. He's not even that intimidating. The Crossmen look more frightening than him. Ryuken doesn't have much to do in this film, dead or alive. He's supposed to be a highly respected figure in the North Star, but he spends the whole time just sitting on his ass and telling Kenshiro to get off of his ass and get the plot going. Even when he's rising from the dead or possessing others, his entire purpose in the film is just him saying, "Get off your ass and find your destiny already. I've got to start 3 more movies by the end of the year." Kenshiro is above passable. I'd be lying if I said I didn't care about him trying to save Paradise Valley and reunite with Julia, but I think his role is about as basic in execution as it is on paper. It's just the typical hero that fights bad guy to save the girl scenario where the hero is a tough, brooding loner who doesn't talk much. Compared to Bat, Lin, and Jackal, he's as dull as the rock that he destroys at one point. I'm more interested on the condom stuck on his chest than him. Was there seriously nothing else the makeup team could use? Maybe if we saw some more flashbacks showing his relationships with Julia, Ryuken, and Shin, he would have been more fleshed out. But any opportunity is either shortened down or non-existent. On top of that, none of his dialogue stood out to me other than,
"You're already dead."
But only because I remember that from the popular internet joke that spawned from the anime. Charlotte and Asher are also forgettable, and I didn't find the music that memorable either, aside from Lin's song. Speaking of which, after Bat dies, she and the other two never show up again, even after the climax. Also, from what I've looked up, this movie is supposed to be an hour and 43 minutes long, but the copy I'm watching for the video is just an hour and 23 minutes. Did I watch the wrong version or something?
You can't see the future because you're trapped in the present.
If it weren't for some of the supporting cast and the crossmen assault scenes, this definitely would have been a waste of time. But instead, it was mostly a waste of time. As I said, I like the supporting characters and the actors playing them, as well as the crossmen assault scenes, but I think the actual combat scenes are unimpressive, the effects look mostly lackluster and cheap, Shin and Kenshiro are upstaged by the more entertaining side characters, and the movie doesn't know what tone it wants to go for, either balls to the wall violent and gritty, or just 50% of that. And when it doesn't have its good or bad moments, there's just nothing to talk about. What do you want me to say? Just imagine Bob Geldof on steroids saving the day because the Clockwork Orange guy told him to stop playing with his condoms and fight the second villain from Saw, but it somehow did the impossible by being boring. I don't even know who this is for. I'm confident that fans of the manga and anime will not like it. As for everyone else, I imagine they'll see it as cheap, inconsistent, and boring. It was sort of worth it just for Dante and Chris's scenes, but if I wanted to watch anything with them in it where I could get a lot more out of, I'll just watch Avatar again. And Reservoir Dogs for the first time. I heard that Chris plays an even more threatening character in the latter. I'm giving Tony Randall's Fist of the North Star a light 5 out of 10. I can't speak for it since I haven't seen it yet, but I'll just assume that you're better off watching the original anime. But what do you think? What are your honest shots about the live-action Fist of the North Star adaptation? Until next time, blessed are the subjective. And I think for my next episode, I'm going to have to review something of higher quality than the last two. Maybe something that screams nostalgia. I think I have just the thing for that.